Hi guys, welcome back to R.M.Aviation today. Today we'll be discussing Singapore Airlines Flight 006. It was a scheduled flight from Taipei International Airport, Taiwan, to Singapore Changi International Airport. It was on October the 31st in 2000. The flight was operated by a 747-400 aircraft and tragically ended in a crash after a runway accident during takeoff. The incident was one of the most devastating Singapore Airlines history and has resulted in the loss of 83 lives out of 179 people on board. Here's a timeline and some key events. So the flight and initial conditions. The aircraft was a Boeing 747-400, registered 9V SQE. The flight number was Singapore Airlines Flight 006. The departure was Taipei International Airport, Taiwan, and the destination was Singapore Changi International Airport in Singapore. The date was the 31st of October 2000, and the weather at the time of the incident, the visibility at Taipei's airport was poor due to light rain and low clouds. The runway was wet, and there was no significant weather conditions that should have prevented takeoff, but there was some confusion about the runway conditions. The cause of the accident? The cause of the crash was pilot error combined with the confusion in the air traffic control tower and the airport's runway layout. The first issue Flight SQ006 was scheduled to depart from runway 05 at Taipei International Airport. However, due to miscommunication, the aircraft began taxiing towards runway 05 right, which was under construction at the time. Runway 05 right was closed for maintenance, and there was no clear signs to indicate that it was not in use for departure. The aircraft entered runway 05 right, a runway that was being renovated and not suitable for takeoff. This was the main source of confusion that contributed to the crash. Takeoff attempt on a closed runway. The pilots of Singapore Airlines Flight 006 were unaware that they were on a closed runway, which is 05 right, which had been under construction and equipment and debris scattered along it. The aircraft attempted to take off on this runway. The air traffic control cleared the aircraft for takeoff. The ATC were unaware that the flight had moved onto a closed runway, which was a crucial oversight. The pilots did not verify their position clear enough to realise that the mistake they had made, and they began the takeoff roll. 3 was runway under construction. As the aircraft gained speed, it encountered construction vehicles and debris on the runway, which posed an immediate hazard. The runway, which was under construction, did not have proper infrastructure to support the flight's departure, such as clear markings or fully intact pavement or properly positioned lighting. The plane continued to roll down the runway towards the threshold, unaware of the ongoing construction activities. The pilots realised their mistake only too late, but tried to abort the takeoff. However, the aircraft was already travelling too fast for a safe abort. The crash and aftermath. As the plane approached the threshold of runway 05 right, it collided with the construction vehicles and significant portion of the runway infrastructure. The aircraft suffered extensive damage and broke into several pieces. A fire broke out, although some of the passengers and crew managed to escape. 83 of the 179 people on board were killed, including flight crew. The remaining passengers and crew members were seriously injured, and the emergency responders worked to save the survivors. Investigations and findings. The Taiwan Aviation Safety Council, or ASC, with the help of experts from Singapore Airlines and the National Transport Safety Board, or NTSB, of the United States, conducted a thorough investigation into the crash. The key findings of the investigation were as follows. Pilot error. The captain and first officer of Flight 006 failed to verify their position on the runway before attempting takeoff. They were not aware that they were on runway 05 right, which was under construction. Both pilots failed to cross-check the clearance provided by air traffic control with actual conditions on the ground. They did not visually confirm that they were on the correct runway, operational runway 05, and contributed to the miscommunication. Air traffic control oversight. Air traffic control cleared the aircraft for takeoff without properly verifying that the aircraft had positioned itself on the correct runway. ATC was unaware that the flight had deviated onto a closed runway. The confusion was compounded by poor visibility and communication errors. Although the airport had various safety systems in place, these failed to prevent the aircraft from entering a closed runway. 3. Closed runway conditions and airport layout. The construction zone on 05 right created additional obstacles for the flight. The runway was blocked with construction vehicles and other hazardous materials that made it impossible for a safe takeoff. The airport did not have sufficient warning lights or barriers to prevent aircraft from inadvertently entering a construction zone. Crew training and procedures. The investigation found that while pilots had received extensive training, they did not follow standard procedures to verify their position on the runway. There was a failure to ensure the safety of the flight, and the decision to begin takeoff without checking their position was crucial to the accident. Lighting and runway markings. The closed runway 05 right lacked clear visual markings, warning lights that would have alerted the pilots to its status. There were cones and barricades in some parts of the airport. They were insufficient to prevent the aircraft from entering the wrong runway. Contributing factors: miscommunication and lack of cross-verification. A significant issue was there was miscommunications between the pilots and the air traffic controllers, combined with the lack of cross-verification of runway conditions. The pilots did not realize that the aircraft was on the wrong runway, and the ATC did not notice the discrepancy. The airport safety systems. Taipei's international airport was not equipped with the adequate runway safety systems that could have prevented this mistake. Construction areas lacked proper barriers and lighting, which contributed to the confusion and the aircraft's entry into the wrong runway. Crew fatigue and misjudgment. The flight crew was not fatigued, but the pressure to meet flight schedules combined with poor visibilities may have contributed to their misjudgment. The pilots were not prepared to check for construction works on the runway or to be cautious about their unusual runway conditions. Conclusion and aftermath. The crash of Singapore Airlines Flight 006 was a devastating tragedy caused by the combination of pilot error, miscommunication with ATC, and insufficient procedures at the airport. As a result of this incident, several changes were implemented. The first of these changes was improved pilot training. Airlines and aviation authorities implemented more rigorous training procedures, emphasized situational awareness, cross-checking procedures, and ensuring that pilots verified their position before takeoff. 2 was airport safety. Airports worldwide reassessed the safety of construction zones and visual clarity on runway markings to prevent similar accidents from happening. ATC procedures. Air traffic controllers were trained to verify more thoroughly the position of aircraft on the ground, particularly in conditions of reduced visibility. 4, technological improvements. There was increased focus on improving the safety systems in airports, including better ground control communication and a more robust warning system for closed runways. Final thoughts. The crash of Singapore Airlines Flight 006 remains a poignant reminder of the importance of attention to detail and procedural adherence in aviation. The loss of 83 lives had a profound effect on the airline and the aviation industry as a whole, leading to significant improvements in the aviation industry for safety and operational procedures. Thank you all again for tuning in. Like and subscribe if you would like more. And if you're interested, check out our merch store. And thank you. Hope to see you all again for the next video. Thank you. Bye.